Renee, thanks very much for coming into studio.
You're welcome.
We're still talking about modern-day slavery. And, you know, when we look at South Africa's poorest communities, we do find so many vulnerable women, particularly children. We often see them just roaming the streets, you know, not an adult in sight. This surely must be to blame for the rising numbers we're seeing.
Absolutely. Michelle, thank you for giving us the opportunity to raise this, because everything starts with awareness and the public being aware, and exactly like you, wondering who are these children and who's taking care of them. I think as a South African, the one thing, having been involved with 821 for a couple of years and reading the UN reports and seeing the international trend, the one thing as a South African which really sticks out is the fact that 54% or 54 out of every 100 people in South Africa qualifies as being vulnerable. And that is very, very high, and that is due to a lot of other factors. Human trafficking is a crime, but it's also caused by other crimes, such as financial problems, climate change, people not being able to live rurally anymore, having to come to the city, having to work here, parents living and working far away from home. And I think that is the number one problem right now, is that people are so vulnerable. Yes, a lot of children, but in South Africa specifically, a lot of women as well. Women are being trafficked.
You talk about 54 out of 100 people qualifying as vulnerable people.
Correct.
How does that number compare to the rest of the world?
The rest of the world, the vulnerability is much lower. So the US is, I think, something like 12 out of every 100. And that changes a lot. Also changes based on what happens to countries, conflict in areas. Southeast Asia has got very, very high numbers due to climate change and storms and communities not being able to rectify farmlands anymore. A lot of South American people are vulnerable as well. Most of them get trafficked for work and for labor into the North Americas. So it's very interesting when you start looking at the regional trends, which we're now being able to predict more because we're now looking at this more carefully as a global population for the last couple of years. So there's definite trends. In South Africa, our trends is not as much South Africans going abroad, although there is that, but it's locally people coming from poorer communities, poorer provinces, farming communities into Johannesburg and into Cape Town and Bloemfontein and the big metropolises.
Now, Renee, in our work, we speak to a number of organizations, some of them doing work in communities where we see these vulnerable people on a daily basis. You know, we see so many child-headed households in South Africa, in our poorer areas in particular. Are we doing enough as government? I mean, we don't often hear about social workers going into those areas and assessing different homes. You know, who is the adult in this home? Why is there only a 12-year-old child and their 5-year-old brother living in this one house? Are we doing enough?
Absolutely not, in my view. I don't work for the government. I don't have a horse in this race. I'm just a concerned citizen who saw this. And if 54 out of 100 people in South Africa is vulnerable, then no, we're not. And it's not just the social aspect. It is also a financial aspect. And it is also business owners and people who want people to work in their homes asking questions. Who are you? Do you have a visa? Who got you here? Where's your passport? Do you have a travel document? Why did someone just bring you to my doorstep? So I think that was, because it's such an overwhelming problem, what can I do? I asked myself that, and that was raising awareness, asking questions when no one will ask questions, you know, seeing that there's a kid on the street with no adult, maybe asking, hey, who are you? Where are you from? You know, when you see kids walking around in shopping centers, I'm now that lady that goes, hey guys, how did you get here? Where's your mom? You know, who's the adult? Who's waiting with you? So I think just the government can't do everything. We've seen that. So I think that as private citizens, we should ask questions. We should speak up when we see something isn't right.
So it is such an overwhelming issue because, as you say, it's not just something that you can pinpoint to one particular thing. So how do we go about this? What should be our next sort of immediate urgent steps?
I think being aware that this goes on is the first thing, to raising awareness and to getting the authorities are definitely becoming more and more on the ball. The Hawks is involved now. The Department of Justice and Constitutional Development has launched a tool in April this year to report more South African instances and cases to see, you know, what are the most vulnerable communities. There's a helpline that we have, so to report that, I think is a very good thing. That's firstly. Secondly, as private citizens, ask questions. Just ask questions, because I think Labour and Absolutely, and unemployment is a massive thing in our country. Everyone needs a job and wants a job, and don't just look the other way because money is involved and you think it's a clean job like a domestic cleaner or someone that works in your shop. I think just ask the uncomfortable questions and be responsible, because we actually have people phone in to say, hey, I'm on a bus, I'm from Bloemfontein to Joburg. There's 2 kids here, but the people that they're with don't speak the same language. Something's up. That's one of our success stories. And then we can actually phone the police and say, here's the number plate. Let's do something. And they contacted the bus driver. We helped them. We had a mom phone us about 2 weeks ago from a very prominent school in Johannesburg saying, my daughter was just offered a modelling contract in London on Facebook. So just ask the questions. Can you guys check it out? And actually, we then contacted our London team, and it was a hoax.
Wow.
And this is a girl from an affluent school in South Africa with a great education that would have been lost.
So just ask questions. If something doesn't seem right, perhaps speak to the relevant authorities.
Absolutely. And join our walk. We have a walk for freedom, which we have once a year across the world. Yeah. So we have 55 of them in Africa, and we have one here in Braamfontein on the 16th of October. So all the information is on 821.org. We gather in every community around the world, and we walk for freedom. We just walk that one morning for about an hour. We walk over the Nelson Mandela Bridge. We walk through Braam. We hand out leaflets. We talk to people. We make them aware of the fact that we're aware, and that they, have the voice to speak up, and there's a helpline, and they shouldn't feel alone.
All right. Thanks you're doing such important work. Thanks very much for coming into studio. Renee Lees is an organizer from A21. If you want to take part in that Walk for Freedom, which is set down for the 16th of October in Braamfontein in Johannesburg, just head on over to their website. It is a21.org. And we're covering this story because of human trafficking being on the rise. 1% of victims, we are told, being rescued. 54 out of 100 people are considered vulnerable in South Africa. Shocking statistic.